Hey everybody, it's Tara from Gossip and Gab Girl. I am going to be changing my channel up a bit. I may even change the name. So those of you who are here for stories about Josh Duggar or celebrities, I'm actually going to step away from that. Too many people are doing it, and secondly, I don't know, I'm just not as interested. And I know it's been a couple weeks since I posted a video. That's for a couple different reasons. First reason is I got a chemical pill and I was waiting for my face to peel off. Secondly, I was having technical difficulties and I've just been super slammed. So, the new direction that we are going to go in here on this channel is I'm going to talk about stuff that interests me. And, Josh Duggar and them really weren't interesting me anymore. Actually, they were making me just kind of depressed. So I'm going to talk about supernatural things here now. UFOs, ghosts, hauntings, weird happenings, and a lot of it I'm going to start off in Colorado, my state, because I think that's the most interesting because I grew up listening to stories and legends about it. So, with that all being said, today we're going to talk about this area here in Colorado called the San Luis Valley. Now, the San Luis Valley is actually the highest alpine valley on the planet. It's a beautiful, beautiful area. It used to be um, thousands of years ago or whatever. It used to be actually this huge lake, and it's at the top of these mountains. It's amazing. Now it's in southern Colorado into the northern tip of New Mexico, and a lot of weird stuff has happened there. And if you've grown up in Colorado, you've heard numerous stories about the San Luis Valley. And I actually, as a mountain girl, have also heard about it, more so because, it's mountain lore. So today, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about um, how it's basically the Bermuda Triangle of the West. I mean, that's how wild and crazy it gets down there. Now, there's been UFO sightings. It's known for its mystical portals and other really, really strange occurrences. Now, there's going to be a trigger warning. We are going to talk about cattle mutilations, so that can be touchy for people. It's not my favorite subject, obviously, but it just adds to, the legend and the aura of that area. Now, in 2019, Taos News reported the accounts of two hunters. Now, they were out hunting. They were just south of the Colorado border. And as they were, walking through the woods, they stumbled across two tall hooded figures near a Ute Mountain. Now, I'm going to post pictures of the areas that I'm talking about so you can see, what kind of terrain we're talking about. Um, the hunters said that they were too tall, their heads were too big to be hunters. I don't know why their heads being too big to be hunters. Now maybe were they like 7, 8 feet tall and had like one of those big bobble heads. Um, I don't know, but that would be interesting, wouldn't it? Now, before leaving the area, because obviously if I saw some stuff like that in the woods, I would poop a little and I would run. Before leaving the area, both men reported seeing a 50 to 60 foot structure that resembled a circus tent or something out of a movie set. So maybe it was, who knows what they saw. You know, Colorado's known that if you're walking through the woods in an area where there's cattle, they're, cow patties have these little tiny mushrooms, and we know what happens if you eat mushrooms. Now, don't just randomly go eating mushrooms in Colorado because there are poisonous ones and you can die. So just don't do that. Okay, so in 2001, Judy Messeline, inspired by the countless UFO stories of her neighbors, opened up the UFO Watch House in a town named Hooper, Colorado. Its population is a booming 105. The UFO Watchtower has a website, which I'll link up, um, and it has a list of equipment recommended for alien investigations. Now, it has everything from military night vision equipment, biohazard suits, jetpacks, and 55-gallon drums of outdoor silver paint. Now, okay, I like to explore and search things out, but if I have to have a biohazard suit or a jetpack, I don't think I'm going to be jumping on that bandwagon anytime soon. So if any of you out there knows anybody that has gone there and done that, or bought a biohazard suit or a jetpack from this website, please let me know. Please, I want to know. The Soundless Valley is actually certified by the International Dark Sky Association. So, to be certified by that association, you have to have or meet the limitation standards um, as far as light pollution. So, you can't have a bunch of street lights, building lights and stuff that you see in a city. Because, San Valley is out in the middle of nowhere, um, surrounded by mountains and beautiful, beautiful mountains. So, since it meets those standards, it is an unparalleled place for stargazing and UFO watching. Sightings in the area have been recorded since the early 1600s. Now, in the early 1600s, obviously there weren't planes or helicopters or satellites that you could mistake for a UFO. So nowadays, you see something weird in the sky and you're like, UFO! But really it's just the sun glinting off a plane. Maybe the plane made a turn and the sun's no longer glinting off, a certain portion of it, so it seems like it disappears. But back in the 1600s, what are you going to mistake that for, Uh, Now, along with the sightings, there have been numerous cattle mutilations. Okay, so trigger warning again. We're going to talk about cattle mutilations. Linda Mountain Howe, a journalist and a paranormal investigator, has been investigating cattle mutilations since 1979. So it's not a new happening. It's actually a very old happening, and it continues to happen to this day. She believes that the bloodless, trackless animal deaths are evidence that we're being visited by extraterrestrials. Now, we'll get into a little bit more descriptive terms, but where I spent half my time, real high up in the mountains, it's about 10,000 feet, and we have a piece of property that has cattle grazing rights. Okay? So these cattle grazing rights basically means that cattle ranchers can come and so anybody that's taken up, that deal and has met with, cattle ranchers and worked out, a deal where they bring their cattle up knows that, that's a big deal to have any of your cattle go missing. I've seen mountain lions take down a cow. Well, not personally, but I've seen the aftermath. I've seen coyotes actually eat a baby cow as the mother's giving birth. It's pretty jacked up. They just kind of sit there and wait for it to come out because, the mother's helpless, the baby's helpless, and they drag it off and eat it. I can tell you that those are not trackless and those are not bloodless. So I've seen natural, cattle deaths. So when you have something that comes up where you don't see any blood, there's no tracks, and you can't quite figure out what happened, it's a little shaking. We would go hiking in this area, and it has this gully that goes down, and you have the creek, is what we call it if you're from the mountains, the creek, and we were hiking down this gully, and it kind of wanders through, and on this rock was this cow's head. Now, it was just the head. There was no signs of the body anywhere, and it had like a burn hole in it, and the neck where it had been, where the head had been cut off, was almost cauterized, and we couldn't figure out whose cow it was because multiple ranchers brought, their cattle up there, and we couldn't see the brand on it since, it was just the head, so we had no idea. But I remember being about 12, 13 when I saw this, and it was a trip. So, I mean, just think about it. So you have this area where it's happening all the time. So, she said that she'd been investigating bloodless, trackless animal mutilations, domestic and wild, because yes, it is happening to deer and horses and, elk. It's happening to elk. I mean, any big animal that you could think of, it's happening to. Now, she did that in Colorado, September 1979. She was the director of special projects at the CBS station KMGH TV in Denver, Colorado. Law enforcement and ranchers both saw strange glowing circular craft at night extend their beams down into the pastures where these cows were grazing. And the next morning, when the sun would come up, they would go check it out, and they would find their mutilated cows laying there, and they would have basically their parts removed, and there's no blood, no tracks, nothing around it to give them any, sort of idea of what had happened. Now, Sheriff Tex Graves of Logan County, Colorado, said in September 1979 that the perpetrators of these animal mutilations are creatures from outer space. Now, it's getting real and it's real strange when the sheriff himself is saying, hey, this isn't a human perpetrator. It's not, some hunter coming up or some poacher that just needs, some meat off these cows. It's aliens. I'm not saying it's aliens, but it's aliens. And, anybody who knows law enforcement knows that they're some of the most practical people you'll ever meet. They're not going to jump to ghosts. They're not going to jump to aliens. They're not going to jump to, some mystical cause before they, will think of a human. So I think that says a lot about the whole circumstance and situation. Now, these ranchers would find their cattle with their innards gone, tongue sliced out, udders carefully removed, facial skin sliced and gone, eyes cored away, and mind you, all of this damage and not a single track surrounding the carcasses or a single drop of blood. And a lot of these, if you go up into the mountains and and you've seen cattle or if you've lived in the areas, you have to go through multiple gates typically to get to these cattle ranches. It's not just a single gate and boom, there you are. It's multiple gates. So for there to not be any tracks from, leading up to it in the middle of nowhere without blood, it's pretty suspicious. So I think that is really interesting. There's also stories of portals being found up in this area. Now, where do these portals go? I don't know. But if you're ever in southern Colorado around, the Great Sand Dunes, stop in the San Luis Valley and check these areas out. Definitely go and check out the watchtower and see what that all looks like and, experience that. And please buy a jetpack. And then once you buy a jetpack and a biosuit, fly around with it, send a picture to me. All right. Well, hopefully some of you will enjoy this new direction. Hopefully I won't lose anybody. But if I do, I understand. But I'm just going to end up doing this for fun anyhow. So thanks, and I will spook you out later.